And let's bring the morning across to now. So the emphasis of this morning was that body language is part of human evolution. It consists of a mix of genetic, inherited, and environmental learned or conditioned influence that are designed to benefit an individual or his group. Okay? So we're sort of linking this morning with now. So let's sort of have a look and play around a bit. Is that a real or a pretend smile? Who thinks that's real or pretend?
Pretend.
Okay, just pretend. Fantastic. Oh, okay. We'll go back to it later. Okay. Okay. Oh, okay. And would you say this is real or pretend?
Real.
Okay.
Real.
Okay. That's real. Yeah. Okay.
I'm very clever pretend.
Okay, possibly. Why would you say this is pretend? Why?
Her eyes are the same. It's just
Wow.
the mouth that's all that's moving. It's the mouth, all her eyes are.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Yeah, you stole my thunder now. You stole my thunder. That's a good point. We'll get to it for sure. And why would you say this is? Those who say that's real.
You see his eyes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good observation. Okay, so the distinction has been of interest to researchers for a long time now. What's real and what's not real. And we'll sort of look. Why do you think it would be important for someone to have an idea if someone's really smiling or not? What would be the relevance? Why do you think there's any relevance? Why would we bother to care in coaching therapists?
Yeah, because if you want to know if a person's being genuine, what they're actually giving you the information and giving you is congruent.
Of course, yeah.
So,
yeah. So if a woman meets a guy and says, "Do you want family and children?" and he's exactly. That was only joking there, by the way. Do you want to get married? So you are right. They can grow. So from a therapy point of view, it's important, I think, because it really gives you an idea of where to probe, where not to probe, and if they're uncomfortable and teaching. And we know in many areas, and you put it really well there, where okay, is a congruency there. So I think it's useful. One useful indicator. You've got the Duchenne smile. We'll sort of look at briefly, and it involves the voluntary and involuntary contractions of two key muscles: the zygomatic major, which raises the corners of the mouth, and the orbicularis oculi, which raises the cheeks. So that produces what you guys alluded to there, the crow's feet around the eyes. That said, like someone pointed out, Botox might have a say in reading people in that respect. So this muscle here, the orbicularis, it is the muscle around the eyes. We'll look at it shortly, and its role in smiling. Okay, the Duchenne smile comes from the French physician, Guillaume Duchenne, who studied physiology and facial expressions in the 19th century. He sort of hit the ground running with it. That's where it comes from there. So a scientist has discovered there's two types of smiles, actually controlled by two completely different parts of the brain. So we touched on the brain earlier, and I sort of touch on it again now. And so the fake smile, the cheesy grin, if you want to call it that. I don't really like the word fake, because sometimes people got that cheesy grin that, is controlled by the motor cortex. Okay, we all know the motor cortex. I'll sort of go into more detail shortly. The Duchenne smile is controlled by the limbic system. So one, we have more constant control over than the other. Okay, so the motor cortex, think about it this way, is controlled by, so it's a more voluntary movement. You've got more control of it. The Duchenne being the limbic system, so if you get cut up on the road, what's your immediate reaction? Fight, flight, freeze. If you get some bad immediate reaction, so if you saw a dog chasing you, you probably wouldn't smile. So it's a more unconscious response. We're less, if not in control of that. So when the person, when someone volunteers, you see them breathing higher up, then that's automatic. Or someone volunteers in the group today and they breathe higher, then that's automatic generally. Not even aware of it, the sympathetic nervous system's kicking in, fight, flight, freeze, danger. Okay, if that's the way, if they breathe deeper, parasympathetic kicks in, calms it down, smooches muscles, relax the muscles, and they sort of calm down. So you've got automatic movements, you've got movements that we more voluntary control. I think one thing to think about too, that many expressions of simple emotions, we touched on this afternoon, are universal, but are moderated by display rules that determine by cultural consideration. So culture plays a big part, but we're going to sort of go into more detail on micro-expressions this afternoon, which is a really, really important part of the course. Really important part. So the motor cortex is in the neocortex. It's in the frontal lobe. Okay, in the motor cortex, it signals sent to your muscles. They all originate from motor cortex. It's responsible for all voluntary movements, like making a drink of coffee, getting out of bed in the morning. It's generally motor cortex. Okay, and the zygomatic major, the reason causes the mouth, is generally a voluntary response. Okay, so you know if you're going to take a picture for Facebook, okay, we might see some sound bites that you've had you just stubbed your toe when you're hopping around the room, but I better smile for the camera now, so to speak. And it's really fascinating. It was a study. I'm going to stand correct in the study now. I was writing a dissertation one time, a few years ago now, and there's a study I read. I can't remember the study now. Do email me. It was about, I've got it somewhere, I was reading this study one time. It was about these researchers in America at a university. They studied pictures of people at university or at different stages in their life, and 30 years later, the smile correlated with people who were still happily married and not as well. The story, I tell it quite loosely. It just came to mind then, but you email me, I'll be able to track it down. It's just some research I read about. So the orbicularis oculi, that's the raising of the cheeks. So you've got the crow feet, so they call it, around the eye. So you can sort of see that there. If we sort of look over here, you can see where it is. Around the eye. It's the sphincter muscle that surrounds the eye. Okay, and the cheesy grin, the fake smile, involves contraction of just as generally speaking, the zygomatic major. We cannot generally control the orbicularis oculi muscle. We generally can't control it. Okay, it's generally automatic. Okay, you can sort of see there the zygomatic major muscles and their expression. There you can see they sort of, so you can voluntary. Look at that. So you're right. Those of you who said, based on what we know so far, it looks to me that it probably is a fake smile. But that said, we can generalize. We talked about generalizing earlier. We have to put the context together. We don't know if that was taken at a point where she was about to, but generally the two will correlate together, probably simultaneously. But we don't know. But you don't really see too much going on here. But there could be for other reasons that which I won't go into. But you can see there, okay, that's sort of pretty prominent, isn't it? And that sort of is less prominent, one would think. And it's amazing how you guys sort of pretty much got it. Does that look real? Or yeah, I think so. Yeah. I think so. You can sort of see the. But then that said too, I suppose with certain people there are going to be variable factors that influence. Some people genetically, some people. It might be age-related. Who knows? Where in tech, there may be more the features around the eye be more prominent. So they're variable factors, which skin type, many things to contribute to that. But that looks to me to be pretty congruent. I would think, based on what we know so far. So most people can't voluntarily control the muscles around the eyes. So think about it. Blinking, for example. You can control to a point, but how many times do you think you'll blink in a minute without realizing it? Okay? So this sort of means that your eyes scrunch up on the sides, which create that sort of crow's feet. It makes your eyes narrow. So the reinforced lining there. So you can sort of see the two muscle groups where we are. The zygomatic major, and the orbicularis oculi around there. And they're the sort of two areas that we're looking at, the key areas where smiles are concerned. Real or? Yeah. Exactly. And can you see the sort of...
It's almost a grimace, isn't it?
Yeah. Okay. And definitely. What's being expressed there, do you think more?
Yeah, outside.
I think so. definitely. I mean, it's not easy to see. Her hair sort of covers that part, but you can sort of still see the eyes. They're not, you know, moving in that direction. So I would agree with you guys. Does that look real? Or
Yeah.
I think so too. You can sort of, okay. Can you see the eyes that we sort of talked about before? Okay, the crow's feet, so to speak. Okay, the link between the two. So does that? Who thinks that looks real? Yeah, I would say it looks pretty real to me. Okay, real or not real?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so too. Real or not real?
Botox.
Yeah.
Real Botox.
Yeah.
Difficult.
That's going to be a new criteria now. We didn't have that criteria 10 years ago. Now it's the Botox smile. That could be. You know, if I was taking it on face value, I'd probably think that it doesn't look too congruent. But then, you know, like we mentioned earlier before, there may be other things that influence people's smile. I'm not political.
No, you're lowering the tone.
I'm not political. I'm gonna get all these.
Everything's fake.
Yeah. I'm gonna get trolled now. All these Trumps. I'm not political, by the way. I just thought it was a good indicator. Does that look real?
No.
Yeah. There we go. And here it's harder to tell, isn't it? Because that sort of hair covers it. Does that look sort of real? Even the hair coloring. Okay. No. I think it's harder to tell because the position of the face makes it more difficult.
That looks like it's posed.
Yeah, it definitely looks like it's posed to me.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would agree. Or maybe she's imposing it. Maybe sort of going into a state.
Yeah.
And sort of, I would think it's like you know, those sort of stock images where, or an image where you're having to and the person's telling you, and you kind of, someone in the background might be sort of geeing her up and, you know, trying to get her to smile and access that state. So it looks like to me, but I could be wrong. Okay, which one looks real? Which one, based on what we've done so far, which one doesn't look real?
Right one is real.
Okay, who thinks that one there?
Yeah.
That's real, yeah.
And the other one?
No.
Okay, what are the differences? Spot the difference.
Eyes.
Yeah, definitely, very much so. So you can see, and even the exaggeration, even the mouth.
Eyes, yeah.
Yeah, there's a difference, and sort of, you know, collectively, I think you can sort of go one step further and look at collectively the way the two sort of match really. So yeah, so we're all happy with that one there looks real and the other one doesn't look real. I think so too. I would agree with that as well, definitely. So here.
All fake.
Yeah. You're all fake. You're all liars. Okay. And you can see how this could be useful in a meeting. So you're sort of presenting an idea, and you look at their reaction. Because we talked about how beliefs impact our emotion and our behaviour, our physiology. So you can be in discussion, and that's a very fabricated image. You can see that. But ultimately, it sort of gives you an indication. Does that look real? Or okay, we're going to talk more about this afternoon. That's a tight lip smile, and what that is generally is concealment of thoughts. Okay, the tight lip smile, and when the lips are stretched without the teeth exposed. Okay, such a smile shows harbouring of a secret, concealment. Okay, has anyone ever seen their children do that sort of smile before? Okay. Or maybe the boss works in at work and walks in at work and they've got that sort of concealed. Maybe he or she's making redundancies, and you're on the list. So we see that. Where would you see that? Where have you seen that generally? That sort of concealed smile. We're going to come back to this afternoon, by the way. We'll sort of. Where have you seen?
When people can touch us.
Okay.
You know.
Mm-hmm.
They're trying to hide the fact that they've just dropped something and broken on your breast piece.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, they're brilliant. Yeah, it's a possibility. Anything else you can think of where someone might be concealed?
A cynical smile, where you.
Okay, that's a possibility, and it's all influenced by an event, their beliefs about their values about a certain situation, and okay, and we'll go into more detail this afternoon, but they're harbouring a secret, concealment. They may not be expressing their true thoughts and feelings. So you might be in that meeting and the person might project an idea and the person might sort of, okay. But we'll touch on that more this afternoon. I brought that into the equation. We've got other stuff to cover. We'll go back to that. So they say that body language is 7% verbal and 93% is facial expression and voice tone and gesture, so to speak. That's a rough indicator. That's what science says, open to interpretation. I think it's context dependent too. But years ago, when I used to work in football, years ago, and they really wanted coaches to praise the young footballers. Praise is the big thing. And what would happen, because I was told to praise people, and you get brownie points for praising the footballers, what they would do, some of the coaches would sort of stand there, and little Johnny would come and kick the ball and be like, well done, well done, well done. And is that really authentic? And what tells you it's not authentic?
Tone of voice
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
and
yeah, it's understanding it well. So it's not congruent, and I think that's pretty, on the money, I think, based on science, based on understanding, that I think 93% is going to be based on, the context is important too. I think the culture is important too.
Politicians are taught, aren't they, how to use body language to get
That's
the
a good
points
point.
across, etc.
Yeah.
But you can tell when you see them that they've learned that body
Yes.
language, and it's so obviously, even though they're looking like
Yeah.
they're doing the right body language of what they're saying, you can actually tell that it's fake. And
Yeah.
You can actually tell that that's been taught because it doesn't come
Yeah,
naturally.
possibly they just got to speak, and I can.
Yeah.
That's what I'm
Well, again, another line.
Yeah. Yeah, no, there's some good politicians, I'm sure. Just haven't met any. But you're right, and I think the key thing is really the event is key as well. So our interpretation of the event. So really, so the interview, you're going for an interview, then you've got beliefs about the interview. Presentation, beliefs about the presentation. You're in a meeting, beliefs about the decision that's been made. We could personalize it, emotional reasoning. We could distort it. We could see it based on our reality. Underlying schemas could impact our emotion linked to that situation, the brain being implicit. Then we've got consequences behaviorally, emotionally, and physically. So let's say, for example, you're being made, or there's redundancies at work. What do you think goes through someone's mind if they get the news we're making people redundant? Well, it depends on what the situation is, isn't it, for the person, but as a general rule, how do they might react?
Worry?
Yeah, there could be worry, and that's the feeling, but what sort of thoughts would prompt that worry?
I'm going to lose my job.
Yeah, I'm not going to be able to pay the bills, I'm going to end up living on the street, and you start to worry, and then physically get a reaction. So if someone cuts you up on the road, what do people generally do? It's like, yeah. There's a reaction immediately. So you've got these sort of emotionally, let's look at it this way. If you go into an interview, you might start breathing higher. Okay, you're presenting, you might start looking away. You might sort of, to use you might automatically react in a certain way. So your beliefs and your values play a big part in your reaction, non-verbally as well. So what if someone gets bad news, what might they do you think? What could someone do if they get bad? What's the first thing that people do when they get bad news automatically? Some really, really bad news. They might sigh, the heart rate goes higher, the cortisol. If they're in danger, what do? If someone's in danger, say dogs chasing them, what might someone do? So, yeah, they could tense, they could fight, they could freeze, they could flop. Okay, so you can see how the beliefs and values play a big part and have a knock-on effect emotionally, behaviorally, and physiologically, very much so. So the context is key as well, but we'll talk more about that this afternoon. It's really important, I think, for me in the big picture. Because in a meeting, the situation that's gone on in the meeting all has different permutations, different people. So redundancies are being made. If the person was going to leave anyway, they might react differently. So you might be invited to a party, and you might be excited about going, and you get the news, you're invited to a party, yay! You might be more neutral. Well, you might be like, oh, it's, and not one is right or wrong, but that's to emphasise how that impacts. We'll go more into that detail this afternoon. So body language often gives away most intense feelings in an automatic process that involves our personality, our core beliefs and thoughts. Okay, body language depends on situational context too. So it might depend on the party you're invited to. That could be a big thing. The redundancy might mean, the redundancy might mean if you're a multi-billionaire and you don't plan on working no more, you might react differently to someone who's struggling. And these are sort of things to think about. We'll touch on more this afternoon. So non-verbal expressions are related to personality traits and beliefs. Body language is a part of non-verbal behaviour, is expression of underlying feelings and beliefs. Okay, we'll talk more about that before. So in the therapeutic movement, sometimes we'll point here. Sometimes I'll point here. Where's the anxiety, I ask them? It's here. Okay, where do you feel the pain? It's here. They'll describe it in a mind-body way. Okay, and that's useful because we can then dissociate and understand it better, but we'll go into more detail later. Culture is important too. Anyone can think of culture? Anyone sort of gone to a different country where they've got different... Yeah.
I've not been there, but working in an international school, Russian people generally seem to be a little bit less friendly on the first approach, so less smiling.
Okay. It could be boundary proximity. Yeah, that's a good point. It could be, and culture does play a part in proximity, in gesture. And I'll go into some detail this afternoon, but one gesture might mean one thing in one country and something different in the other.
Bulgaria's the opposite way around.
Yeah, and in some places in South America, if you give certain signs that we do here, it's seen as like, you're telling someone off. So certain things we do here, that wouldn't be acceptable there, and vice versa. Okay, so culturally is key. In different environments, it's different. And if you go to some Mediterranean countries, and my background is from Italy, and if I go there, then as a general rule, certainly in the southern parts, men will kiss other men on the cheek. Now, I grew up in a different environment, and the environment I grew up in, that generally didn't happen. If a man kissed you on the cheek, I grew up in southwest Sydney in a tough working class environment, and that sort of generally didn't go on. But whenever I'd go there to visit family and friends, and when in Rome, do as the Romans do, what do you do? They'd probably be offended if you didn't. But then culture, we respect culture. Culture plays a big part in it, very much so. So if you're a guy, I don't recommend you walk the streets of Bury and start kissing people on the cheek. Or anywhere for that matter, but as a general. So as a bit of fun to sort of lighten the mood a bit, I thought what I'd do, because a couple of people emailed me and have emailed me in the past about attraction signals, and I thought we're going to have a much intense day. We're going to get with all the exercises, and you worked really hard this morning. So I thought to lighten the mood, we'll sort of play around a bit and look at attraction signs. Okay, does that work for people? Or a bit of fun and game? Okay, so how do you know someone's, well, maybe not so attractive, at least likes you? So proxemics is a big part between people. So people moving towards your comfort zone. In Western culture, in the UK and America, it's pretty similar, I think. 18 inches is the sort of zone. Okay, 18 inches is the sort of zone. That's intimate distance. Okay, we'll go into more detail about these ranges this afternoon. But for now, let's focus on 18 inches. 46 centimetres is generally, you might get a tape measure next time if you want to, for lovers, children, close family members, friends, pets and animals. So if someone comes close up to you, yeah. But it's saying, like I said, certain cultures are different. So certainly whenever I go and do courses, I'm doing a course there this week actually, in Italy over the weekend. In the northern part, it's a little more similar to here. In the southern part, they will come up and speak to you face to face. And that's, right in your face, and there's nothing untoward about that. Whereas if I spoke to someone the same way here, I'd be like, oh, and I think that sort of people can feel uncomfortable, can't they? It's an intimate zone. Okay, someone goes to that boundary, it probably signals that they're comfortable around you, okay, at that level. Okay, that gives you an idea, does it?
Is it right, that's where the saying comes from, keep somebody at arm's length?
There's a possibility,
arm's length is like, if it's within arm's length, it's quite intimate, isn't it?
Yes.
And arm's length means you're
good
not
point.
too close.
Yeah. Exactly, and no, for sure, I think so. And we'll look at other proximity distances as we go along. We'll touch on this more as we go along this afternoon. Haptics is touch. It's just a jargon for touch. Okay, so people touch. I want you to bear in mind too, some people are adamant about this, some roles require touch. Okay, if you go to A&E and the nurse touches you, it's probably unlikely she's trying it on. She may take your blood pressure. Okay, so there are sort of with all these things, you got to remember that it's context dependent. There are if the doctor says, okay, can I just have a look at your arm, for example, it's more than likely that can I have a look at your arm, for example. Okay, if you're in a bar and someone starts doing that on a Friday night, it might be that they're interested. And the reason being is skin touch produces oxytocin. The chemical oxytocin is skin touch. The bonding chemical, the chemical that we like in the bloodstream. When when baby is born, there's an immediate, in a biochemically functioning woman, there's oxytocin produced. That's the bond. Sometimes it doesn't produce as much in some women than other women, and sometimes certain things can alter it. We won't go into that in detail. I can talk about that more this afternoon. And the baby doesn't get the soothing it requires. Where the non-attachment, the key is attachment. And that generally is at its highest level with mum and baby for the first 2 years. No matter what the baby looks like, what the baby does, the baby could throw up all over you, it doesn't matter, the baby's fine. But then after about 2-3 years, the baby drops a cup on the floor and he gets told off the baby, he or she, and thinks, I can do wrong now. And then it starts to sort of, the goal is to win that affection back again. Mum will always love the child no matter what age they get, but the chemicals aren't the same anymore. And that's where you get some of the striving behaviour. And you see plenty of strivers out there where they don't get the affection that they felt they should have got, or the affection that they intended to get, and they kind of strive. We see, the classic case of comedians try and make the mum laugh, and then they try and make people laugh around them. They try and get a way to get that affection. They look for ways, coping strategies. Another story for another day, but if someone touches you, then oxytocin. If they hug you, all the more. And I think 20 seconds as a general rule, hug. And that's why I think it might call me cynical in my some of these sort of seminars that you go to, these motivational ones, they sort of get people hugging each other all the time. Okay? And I think that's probably a tactic. Look, I'm a cynical soul, aren't I? Because they want to sell you all the stuff at the end, isn't it? Get enough oxytocin going, the bond chemical. Maybe I'm being cynical, I don't know. But I don't see the need to hug everyone, every 5 seconds. And hug the person next to you, and hug the person. I went to a seminar a while ago in London. It was like, hug the person next to you. I'm like, okay. Yeah, this guy was like 12 foot tall, and he's like, gripping me. I'm going, dude, I'm not comfortable, dude. I'll give you another hug. Just really walk away. Yeah. I wouldn't have complained if it was something. Okay. So gazing eye contact, oxytocin too, possibly. Not always, but it can be. In certain cultures, also eye contact's not as prominent, and also sometimes people avoid eye contact because underlying schemas, they feel uncomfortable. But we'll talk about research around eye contact. It's all variable too. I think that's something to it's more individualised, I think. The research take it loosely. Because I don't feel comfortable if someone eyeballs me for a long time, and I feel comfortable eyeballing them, but if I'm having a conversation, then that gives me an idea that we're connecting on some level. So as culture is important too. So for the guys, some tips for the guys and girls, why not? The primal brain, so the chemicals perspective, one of the key chemicals, scientists hypothesize pheromones, a natural sexual attraction, the chemicals they give off, and generally those chemicals are excreted in glands, sweat glands, and are more expressive in certain ways. So the neck exposure, okay, is one thing to think about. The neck exposure, and the neck exposure relates to the chemicals that gives off by doing that, because you can the chemicals that are released during contact, certainly during sweat and perfusion, are out there. I'd look at that loosely because there's no strong evidence, and some other scientists look the other way. Other things to think about too is that the nerve endings in the neck, primarily, okay, more sensitive. Also, the neck's more vulnerable part of the body. If someone's sort of showing you their neck, if someone's comfortable with their neck, that's the vulnerable part in primal times that was attacked by a tiger, by a lion. Evolutionary history, prey will generally go for that sort of neck. So if someone's sort of doing that, as well as the nerve endings, as well as the chemicals, as well as everything else, that may be one hypothesis. Okay, but the person might have an itchy neck, they might just, I don't know. So it's all context dependent.
It's like Miss Piggy and Kermit, isn't it? She's always going like that, isn't she, all the time?
I didn't notice it.
Yeah, because she realised Kermit, doesn't she? She's always
and that's a great point, for sure. And that may be where that comes from. I don't know. So pheromones. Yeah, so pheromones are chemicals that are secreted in our sweat and other bodily fluids. They potentially influence behaviour of the opposite sex, triggering sexual and excitement. I know that for a long time there's been many research companies trying to get to the bottom of that, to produce fragrance, and because the limbic system, the part of the brain, smell is the only part of the brain, only sense that goes straight to the limbic system. That's why they use sort of raunchy names and ads for like perfume. And if you've ever had a partner who wore a certain type of perfume, and you broke up and you smell it again, it kind of straight away you get the alarm bells. Or maybe your wife wears perfume, your daughter starts wearing it. That could be we don't want to go there. We don't want to go there. But that's sort of, we look at it loosely because in animals we know it's more profound than humans. We don't know for sure. So I want to sort of get a balance here. I don't want to lead people in the garden path about these sort of things. So let's sort of look at things. The other thing is the suprasternal notch. So you can see that's pretty prominent here. If the woman touches the suprasternal notch, sometimes it's seen as the barriers coming down in certain situations, opening up. So it might not be intimate way. It may be the person just feels comfortable or feeling more comfortable in that certain situations. But it's all, once again, context dependent. I think if you're in an interview, if it's a professional context, it might be just the barrier coming down. If you're in a bar, it might be a different situation. So bear that in mind. The head tilt, okay, we mentioned it before, the cartoon animation there, the tilting the head back and looking up and eyes. This is just a few things here, okay. And the reason I sort of draw that attention, because we know that a lot of this is subconscious. I talked about the eyes before. When people are engaged into a conversation, their eye remains focused on the other person about 80% of the time. That's research, but not exclusively on the eyes for more than 2-3 instances. So people generally feel uncomfortable for too long. Okay, I would probably feel uncomfortable looking at someone in the eyes for a long period of time. But if you're teaching, it may make sense for me, from a teaching point of view, to get eye contact with the group every now and again, to engage the audience. So look around, get eye contact. When you get eye contact, you can volunteer someone there. But it's context dependent too. In some cultures, they don't have the same. And also, some people may have confidence and anxiety issues, and they may look away. So bear that in mind too, the schema, what we said earlier before, with all these things. It's important. So let's look at the other way around. For the women, here you go. Generally point feet. So they're generally pointing that direction, so I'm going to sit like that, so long as any ideas. So generally the men will point feet the woman. So you look in a group, you have a bit of homework at lunchtime, you look at a group dynamic, and the woman that the guy generally has his feet pointed towards in discussion is probably most, if not attracted to, probably feels more comfortable around, because they're directing themselves towards that. Territorial displays. And you can see here, and politicians, so it's sort of marking one's territory. And generally guys will do that. I think personally, when guys do this from a territorial point of view, it probably can be off-putting. Other people in the group, certainly women, not that I'm one that can speak for women, but generally speaking, that's sort of a sign of territory. And you can see that, and you'll see that a lot. Women generally won't sit that way for obvious reasons, but but guys will generally do that.
They do it on aeroplanes and in the tube, and on the train sometimes it's called man spreading.
Yeah. Oh, I know, open up Pandora's box now. But you're right, and you do see it sometimes, like that sort of power struggle, and sometimes you've got the steeple as well. And we'll talk more about that stuff. So the hands in pockets. If a guy is doing that. It's drawing attention, so it's a confidence gesture. So you're in a group and you're being chatted up and the guy's doing that, it probably tells you that they're feeling confident. And you can pour a bottle of water over their head, destroy their confidence. So definitely. Bring them back down to earth. Okay, we'll look at the handshake now. So it's a bit of fun and games, really. And we'll look at how the handshake is relevant. So this will take us into lunch. The simple handshake has evolved over many, many years. Okay, so what do we know? What do these handshakes tell us, do you think? The first one, what do you think? The diagrams probably aren't the best, but as much as one can do.
The top person's the leader?
Mm.
No, the bottom person's the leader.
Okay. That's okay. You know, anyone else? Anyone work anything about these handshakes?
That's it, top person control.
Okay, that's a good point. Okay, it's a good point. We'll talk through them.